memory I have of these islands is the meeting house of the Salvation Army in Hilo on the island of Hawaii. It was a small, crude place, enough for 300 people, I believe. Bare rafters could be seen overhead, and the walls were improved with some biblical teachings written in English and Hawaiian. Don't boast about yourself for tomorrow. Without Christ, there is no salvation. As I entered, the bell of the foreign church, standing atop a beautiful bluff of Hilo, rang 10 times. This place is filled with Hawaiian people, and outside, a crowd of people who could not come inside were standing patiently. This was a meeting conducted by the women. Nevertheless, several groups of men had come there. The women wore Mother Hubbard dresses of calico or cloth and wore white and black sailor hats. The men were dressed in coats and pants made like those of the Americans. Then the multitude of people separated, and 2 tall women entered who were dressed in black clothing. They wore black kid gloves with black hats that were decorated with black feathers. The slightly taller of the 2 had the noble and dignified demeanor of a queen. Red roses encircled the top of her hat, and lying upon her neck and breast were a lei expertly made from some flowers which were woven with palapalai fern. She was Mrs. Kuai Helani Campbell, the president of Hui Aloha Aina o Nā Wahine. Her companion was the secretary of the group's branch in Hilo, Mrs. Emma Navahili. There are 100,000 people on these islands. Of these, not 3% have declared for annexation. To the natives, the loss of nationality is hateful, aberrant. It is the old battle, white man against the brown, might against right, strength against weakness, and power and intellect and art against docility, inertia, and simplicity. A man suffering from an acute attack of annexation mania said to me, "I tell the natives who work for me, you might as well walk out into the sea and attempt to push out the incoming wave with your 2 uplifted hands as to try to prevent what's coming. It's purely a question of conquest, I admit. We are stronger and will win. It's a survival of the fittest." He was a tall man, majestic, handsome-faced, 3/4 haole, as they say here. His hands were gripped tightly in front of him, and he looked down upon the heads bowed before him and gave a few short words of prayer for opening. There is something impressive in strong prayers spoken in an unfamiliar language. You do not hear the words, but tones. He was appealing with his feeling, not his reason. And then the voice of the minister ended. And the audience replied, "Amen." I watched Mrs. Navahi with curiosity when she stood and spoke to the people. I have never heard 2 women speak to the multitudes like this. Would this Hawaiian woman be embarrassed, timid, or self-conscious? None of these things. Her candid manner was like Charlotte Perkins Stetson's 2 years ago, the most interesting speaker of the Women's Congress. The thoughts of the Hawaiian woman were of her subject, not of herself. There was something pleasing in her manner of speaking, which compelled me to look at her, while the person who translated for me by my side whispered her translation to me all the while the words were being spoken.
Ke lahui kanaka na vali kako, ka lahui Hawaii. A ole hoi o ko kako I kaika, hoi wale no ko kako lo kahilike. We are a weak nation of people, we Hawaiians, and we have no power unless we are united. O Amerika, hui pu ia he aina pu o ko aia, o nakanaka o leila, he mau ho aloha, he mau ho aloha hoi, o na la hui na vali. The United States of America is an independent land, and the people there are friends. They are friends indeed of weak nations. E ho ike aku kako ia lako. E ho oma ike aku kako ia lako. E like me ko lako aloha I ko lako aina. A awamo ina eha mamua o kahaawi ana aku. Pela no ko kako aloha I ko kako aina. A e nonoi aku. A ole lako e lave mai ia kako aku. We will show them. We will make them understand that just as they love their land and would endure suffering before giving it up, so do we love our land, and we pray that they do not take it from us. O ko kako manaolana, eia ke kunei, me ke kupaa, he po'ohiwi, me he po'ohiwi, he pu'uai, me ka pu'uai. We will show them, here is our hope, standing shoulder to shoulder, heart to heart. O ka leo nakanaka, o ka leo noia o ke apua, the voice of the people is the voice of God. He oia i'o, e lohe nakaaina ma ke la au o ka moana, I ko kako leo ualo, e wawalo hele aku ai, alohe lako. Surely, the country on that side of the ocean hears our call for help. By joining our voices to cry, they will hear. Makeia palapala kakawinoa ia. O oe e kawahine o Hawaii. A o loa'a oe he wa e no'ono'oi. Upon this petition of ours that we are submitting for your signatures today, you, the women of Hawaii, have a chance to express your thoughts. O ka palapala o nā kane, o ko ouna ia maia nano ia, e ka hui o nā kane, I ka wā e pauai, I ke kākau inoa ana. The men's petition will be sent on by the men's group as soon as the signing of the names by the men in Honolulu is completed. A ole kia he maukana epa, a ole hoi he ho'opuni o ke alahele o ka hana. O ke ia wale no ko kako alahele o ka hana. O ke ia wale no ko kako alahele e haka ka ai. These are not underhanded actions, nor is our course of action deceitful. This is our only way to fight. O ke ia aina no kako ia, ko kako Hawaii. The land is ours, our Hawaii. Kehia, e ho'onele ia ani ko kako lapui? Shall we be deprived of our nationality? E ho'opui ia ani kako me Amerika? Shall we be annexed to America? A'ole, mahalo.
At this time, the minister introduced a woman, Mrs. Campbell, to the people. She spoke with pleasant smiles, and the men and women stamped in approval and cheered. She spoke only a few words, filled with hope. Sometimes she spoke as if she were persuading them all to trust her, with sincerity and gentleness of voice, as she leaned forward and said,
E kupa'a, e ku'umau aloha. Stand firm, my friends. O ke aloha I ka aina, he mea nui ia oi, a me a'u, mamua o na mea a'u. The land is more important to you and I than anything else.
Aloha.
E hiki mai ana ko kākou wā, e kākou. Inoa na kika kati. Ho'opi'i, na ho'i aloha na Hawaii. Sign your names to this petition. Love. E hia la. E hia la e kākou ana inoa ke ia palapala. How many? How many will sign this petition?
We'll sign.
She waved her hands as she spoke, and immediately hundreds of waving hands were turned to her. Dark hands with short fingernails and fingers and worn fingernails. They showed of poverty and work, of contact with the land they claimed.
He mea kākou nū pepa e ia nei. E olelo kākou, I ko oko manao, a Laila. I ke nā Amerika, a Laila. E ho'olohe mai la ko.
What is it? What did she say?
She said, here's a writer for the newspaper. She says to the people, tell her your feelings. Then America will know and perhaps they will listen.
And at this time, something amazing happened. The men and women all stood up one by one and spoke a few words of faith.
My opinion, this is my feeling. I love my land, and I want to be independent from now until forever.
I love this land. I don't want to be annexed. This is the land where I was born, and I love it, just like the American loves his. Would he really want to be annexed to another, larger land?
No, of course not.
I am very strongly opposed to annexation. How dare the Americans rob a people's independence? I want the American government to do the right thing. America has to overthrow Liliuokalani. She must be restored. I will never consent to annexation.
Love our queen.
I have an American father and a pure Hawaiian mother. It is the land of my mother that I love. America has performed an unjust act. How could we love America?
No annexation.
Let them see their wrongdoings and restore the queen. If the great nation was fair, they would not take our land. I will never consent to annexation.
Say no, say to America, I don't want annexation. I want my beloved queen.
That speaker, she's a good woman. She's a Christian and honest person, kind and charitable.
I oppose annexation, me and my entire family.
I am speaking for the people behind me. They cannot enter, therefore they cannot speak. They told me to say no annexation. Never! No annexation.
I am calling from Kaloa. We call this place Hawaiian. We have over 300 members. They have said to me, we really all oppose annexation.
No annexation.
I love my land and oppose annexation. We look to America as our friend, let her not be our enemy.
I'm telling you the truth. The great majority of the people on Molokai completely oppose annexation. They are fearful that if annexed to America, their lands will be lost. The foreigners will gather the benefits and Hawaiians will be put in a worse position than they are today.
I am a mail carrier. Come with me to my district and I'll show you 2,000 Hawaiians that oppose annexation.
Aye.
Let us all stand. Oh, I stand. We all stand to show our love for our country and the Hawaiian flag, not the American flag. Everybody stand. Aloha aina. Stand and cheer. Yay! Thank you so much for participating in our reenactment. It's short, it packs a wallop, and it tells you about what the thinking and the feeling was at that time. And what we generally do, because people are kind of like all over the place, and it's very intense. What we try to do is to provide opportunity for some debrief if you would like to share. So now's the time. This is the talking time, right? For all of us. These guys are tremendous. You know, we've done this maybe 100 times, this particular performance. We've done it quite often. Everyone is different. Every audience is different. We never really know what's going to happen. We kind of hope for the best. Our assumption is that our kupuna are with us. They are with us. So when you open your mouth and you speak, who speaks? Right? And when they're speaking, who's speaking? Tell me you didn't feel them come in. Okay, so that's just me. But I don't think it's just me. I think it's a lot of other people too. And what we'd like to do is to get some feedback from you, those of us who participated actively or who were just watching. How was that? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I have a question then. To this day, the annexation of Hawaii, even though it went through all this process in 1959 and before, it's still illegal because of this. Is that correct?
Yes. Simple question, simple answer. I'll actually provide some context here. There's much more that happened from this point on. Actually, the insurgents were actually kept in control of government. So President McKinley actually appointed the lead insurgent, Sanford Dole, as the governor of the territory of Hawaii. And these individuals began to revise history books in Hawaii. Actually, there was a book published by the Hawaiian Kingdom Board of Education, 1891, called A Brief History of the Hawaiian People, that was used in the Department of Education. And it was a history book. It's a very good history book. I actually used that because, you know, Google Books, it's great Google Books. I found one. And I said, wow, PDF format, send it to my students. That is an excellent book that covers migrations, the constitutional evolution, the cultural, the whole history of Hawaii leading up to Lili'uokalani Kalani. It was written by Dr. W.D. Alexander. He was a Hawaiian subject. Well, in 1893, he was a turncoat. He joined in with the insurgents. In 1899, after this situation killed the treaty, he revised that book, now saying that Hawaii was annexed by a treaty. And he started to revise history, saying Lili'uokalani Kalani was a tyrant and an absolute monarch, countering everything that actually you folks saw. Now, for my doctoral research, I began to draw these things out. Now, currently, I sit on 4 doctoral committees at the university. More of it is coming out. It's unbelievable, the revisionist history, and it's not just within Honolulu. actually in Washington, D.C., U.S. State Department, even the U.S. Supreme Court. In 1906, Lowry versus Territory of Hawaii, the Supreme Court actually stated in their decision that Hawaii was annexed by a treaty of cession July 7, 1898. That's not true. That's not true. It was a joint resolution July 7, 1898. But you can't say a joint resolution in a Supreme Court decision because a previous Supreme Court decision said joint resolutions can't annex anything. They don't have any effect beyond its borders. The reason why it went this far in Hawaii, it wasn't because of the insurgents. It was actually because Hawaii was being built up militarily. Pearl Harbor, 20% of the islands in Hawaii are controlled by the U.S. military. Okay. Now, for myself growing up, that was just, you might say we got desensitized. We just became a part of it. I mean, I wanted to be an officer. My uncles and cousins were all military. And then I found out this information. I'm like, whoa, kind of throws everything off. So Hawaii is not a part of the United States. There's no evidence of that. And I have to get my PhD to provide proof of that. Otherwise, people think I'm crazy. And I had 2 deans of law schools on my committee, one from the University of London, one from the University of Hawaii, 3 political science professors, all non-natives, meaning I picked my professors who could not agree with my theory. See, that's how you defend your dissertation. That's how it's supposed to work in the PhD program. They couldn't deny it. All they asked was, how do you fix this problem? See, it now ventures into the prescription, and Chapter 5 actually sets out how you fix the problem, because you know what? It's actually fixable. The one thing that we have to understand, and what we teach our students back home, as well as our family and friends, don't pick a side. Just claim ignorance. I didn't know, and then learn something. Because everybody today is a victim of circumstance. The culprits and the insurgents, they're all dead. Their children did not inherit a crime. If my dad committed a crime called treason, don't blame me, that's my dad. Okay? So these are the kind of things that are taking place in Hawaii, but the number one issue that we deal with is education. We have to expose, we have to educate, and it has to be responsible. That's the key. So it naturally gets into the now what, but I don't want to get into the now what because we're already addressing the now what. It's at this stage you folks are just starting to learn it. Take your time. I think what this reenactment provides is some tangible proof that people back then knew what they were doing. And by the way, this protest, the petition that you folks, that this is all centered on, we did not know that protest even existed. Dr. Noinoy Silva, a political scientist at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, this was the topic of her doctoral research. She came up, the newspapers were pointing out in Hawaii, pointing out to Washington. Senator Hoare was given the protest, it was accepted into the Senate, read into the record. Must be at the National Archives. She came up with Tom Kaufman, a former Associated Press for the Star Bulletin, very well-known reporter and writer back home. They both came up and they found it on display in the National Archives. It wasn't like it was being hidden. It was on display, a protest. The National Archives entered into an agreement with Bishop Museum back home, and they brought those protests back home in 1998, and it did a circuit on every island. Because the way the protests, the petitions were organized, as you will notice if you take a look at it, they were organized by island and districts. So if you knew where your great-grandparent lived at that particular time, you can go directly to those pages and find your great-grandparent, great-grandfather, grandfather. Some people, the elderly, actually found their parents' signature. Yeah. So it's very powerful, very powerful. And if anything, what it did, it opened it up for more questions to be asked. And that's what started this education and exposure of people just grappling with it. And it's a good thing. There's more things that are happening, but I want to thank also for being a part of Kalei Mailili to bring this to Washington, D.C., because actually this is where the petition was laid. This is where it had the effect. When we're back home, we're outside of Washington, D.C. So the opportunity did arise, and Doug, mahalo. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Oh, no, I just want to express my thought to the professor. Now you have a citizen of Hawaii is the President of the United States. So don't you think the process has reversed? You have captured the entire United States.
Now what I'm going to share with you, I'm an academic, I'm not a politician, I'm not political, I'm an academic. Okay. 2 days ago. The question is, the tables have turned. President Barack Obama is now the president. He's from Hawaii. Okay. Last week.
birthers?
No, wait. Last week, I was also invited, before we came here, to give a presentation at Harvard University and University of Massachusetts. I was there with Professor Cruz and others. And the title of my presentation, which went into much more detail than this, was, get ready, Why the Birthers Are Right for All the Wrong Reasons. Because Article 2 of the United States Constitution, and I teach American politics, that's called American Studies, Hawaiian Poli-Sci 130. Article 2 says that no one shall be president or vice president who is not natural born. Natural born comes from the Latin word jus soli, native born. You have to be born within U.S. territory as distinguished from jus sanguinis, parentage, or naturalization. Now, President Barack Obama, I am not saying he is not an American. He is an American because his mom is an American. So that is by jus sanguinis. She's from Kansas. But I can say with certainty, if that birth certificate is correct, that came out of Hawaii, he is not natural born American. He is a American by parentage. Now, as far as the ramifications for that, that is not our responsibility or problem. It's just what we say back home. It's called collateral damage with this information. Because for myself, I realized I was in the Army for 10 years. And I began to realize I might be in the wrong Army. That was heavy for me because I have no problems firing live rounds. I was a fire support officer. My last command was a battery commander. I had no problems. I'm an officer. I have a duty, I have an obligation, and I loved it. The problem I had, I could die for a country not mine now. That was a problem. And I thought about my uncles in Vietnam, my cousins and my uncles in World War II, World War I. It got very personal. And that's what prompted me to get these questions answered. And I didn't know it was going to get me to the point of getting a PhD, where I'm now the so-called expert in this area. But yeah, I love Barack Obama, but that's not our problem. And we are also studying and watching the race that's going on in Honolulu. We teach it. But again, you can see this information is quite compelling. And I hope that it should only get you to ask more questions, because questions are good. Yeah, questions are good. In the Army, we used to say, KISS, the acronym, keep it simple, stupid. But I use that in college, so I can't use the word stupid, so I say, keep it simple, students.